I guess we need to press record. All right, so welcome everyone to the Clear Admit MBA Essay Insight webinar series. I'm Graham. I'm your host for this event. I'm going to moderate. And what I'd like to do to sort of get us started today as we dive into essay topics at a number of leading business schools is introduce each of our panelists just really briefly. So I'm going to, we'll just roll through it here. So first up, we have Nicole Faraday. She is a Senior Associate Director for full-time MBA admissions over at Berkeley Haas. Hey, Nicole, it's great to have you.
Hi, Graham. Great to be here. Thank you for having this.
Yeah, no, always a pleasure. Next up, we're also going to hear today from Pat Harrison, who is Director of Admissions, Evaluation, and Yield at the Tuck School of Business at Dartmouth. Hi, Pat.
Hey, Graham. Thanks so much. It's always fun to be here.
Yeah, it's great to have you. Next up, we also are going to hear from Stacy Battis, who is Director for Full-Time MBA Program over at University of Texas McCombs School of Business. Hey, Stacy.
Hey, Graham. Hey, everyone. Excited to be here.
And we're also going to hear today from Lika Hertz, who's the Associate Director of Admissions and Student Recruitment at UNC Kenan-Flagler. Hey, Lika.
Hi, thanks for having me. Hello, everyone.
Yeah, it's great to have you. And last but not least, we're also going to hear today from Alexis Scott, who's the Associate Director for MBA Admissions at Foster University of Washington. Hi, Alexis.
Hi, everyone. Excited to connect today.
Yeah, it's great to have you. So what I thought we could do before we get into each of your program's specific essay questions, I thought it'd be interesting to sort of step back and just learn a little bit about why you all have essays in the first place, and also whether or not you have policies around ChatGPT or the use of like artificial intelligence when it comes to people writing their essays, because that's a very hot topic. So we'll just go alphabetically. We'll start with Nicole at Berkeley. Nicole, tell me one thing that you hope to learn. Like what's one thing that you like about, reading essays and, that you don't get somewhere else in the file? And then if you could elaborate on whether or not your team has a policy about artificial intelligence.
Yeah, so I would say one of the things about the essay in the application, it's kind of the one part of the application that an applicant has full control over. So this gives applicants the opportunity to share their personal and professional experiences in their own words. And this really gives us a chance to get to know applicants on a more personal level. So that's what I love about our essays, is that it just gives us a chance to get to know who these applicants are, their personalities and everything like that, that you just don't find in a resume or in a transcript.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then as far as ChatGPT and AI, we don't have a policy per se. We always say that essays should reflect the applicant's own ideas and experiences. It should reflect their writing style. So that's what, one of the things we're evaluating. So yeah, we don't have necessarily a policy but they can receive, advice on content or editing, including, from ChatGPT or AI or, people that they know. But our policies kind of, the final written text should be their own.
Okay. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. One thing I thought I should do actually is pause here before we move on and talk with Pat from Tuck, and just mention to those of you who've joined us that each of our panelists is going to enter into a small breakout room at the end of our main session today. And that's so that you can ask them specific questions related to their programs and get any questions you have addressed. So stay tuned for that portion. As a result, we don't really do Q&A during the main session here. So hold on to your questions. You'll be able to ask them of our panelists at the end. But let's move on and talk with Pat over at Dartmouth Tuck. Yeah, Pat, what's one thing that you like about the essays? And yeah, again, if there's a policy around ChatGPT or the use of these tools in general with essays.
Sure. I think that the essay, the beauty of it is this is your opportunity to tell your story, to bring it all together of, why are you looking to do this? Who are you? Where have you come from? It provides us a much richer picture of you than, as Nicole noted, than your test scores and your resume and your GPA. So I love it because it really brings people to life. And then on the AI questions, similarly, like we don't have a formal policy, but you will hear, if you talk to any admissions officers, the word authenticity comes up time and time and time again. And we're really looking for getting, we want to get to know you, and to be an authentic representation of you. If a computer writes it, it's not you. And so I think, one, if it was fully written by a computer, I think it kind of skirts the honesty and integrity policies that schools have. But I think even more so, the real you is not going to come out. And when the real you comes out, that's when we get excited to admit people. So I, use it to edit and help a little bit, but strongly caution you against using it to write the entire essay.
Yeah, I don't know about you guys, but if you read anything that ChatGPT writes, it's not exactly riveting stuff typically. I mean, and it lacks that kind of authenticity. So let's move on and talk with Stacy over at UT Austin. Stacy, what's your take on these? Yeah, how do the essays come into play? What do you like about them? And then any comments on AI?
Yeah, I think I'll just echo everything that my colleagues have said. And I think specifically one thing that's really helpful for the essays for us is really assessing the research that you've done, not just on the program, but on why you want this MBA. It's a pretty big commitment to, leave your job in most cases for a full-time program and commit to this program personally and professionally. So that's really helpful information for us to get. And oftentimes the essays are a really great place to kind of assess that. In terms of our policy on ChatGPT, we added a sentence to our application this year to address the usage of it. Our opinion, to kind of simplify it, is that I think, AI, of course, is the future. It's not going away anytime soon. And I think we'll continue to learn great ways to use it. But for us, it should be utilized more for idea generation, for kind of assistance, much like you would use a calculator. But we can, believe it or not, we can already tell when something has been written completely by ChatGPT. So you want to write it in your own voice because it is, despite all the capabilities, I think the more and more we see essays that are written by AI bots and tools, we really are starting to be able to tell. So please use your own voice at the end of the day.
Okay, yeah, great advice. Let's turn to Lika at UNC Kenan-Flagler. Lika, what are your thoughts on these two questions?
Yeah, so obviously great answers from all of the panelists as why we use essays. And I was taking notes as far as like, why do we use essays? And already all of the things that I would have said have been touched on. But I will say from maybe a selfish perspective, I think it's really interesting to we change our essay questions basically year to year. And it's interesting for me as someone who's been here a long time to read new answers and learn new things about people, because a little behind the curtain, we're all reading hundreds, if not thousands, of applications. And so the more, different stories and unique information that we can learn about you, the better. And I think that essays are a way to get to know the candidate in a way that's less prescribed, right? Like resumes tend to look pretty similar. Recommendation letters are a great way to learn about you, but not from the first person. So I think essays are a great way to control the narrative, as I believe someone else has said. In regard to ChatGPT, I would say for us, I think using AI to write your essay would go against our sort of code of, our honor code or code of conduct. And I definitely see places in business school where AI and ChatGPT are really beneficial inside and out of the classroom. But I don't think that it's appropriate for an essay because we are looking for that authentic voice. I always encourage people, if you're looking for like grammar, spelling, things, share your essay with a trusted colleague or friend to read through your essays. I think that that's really helpful so that you're still remaining authentic and true to the story or the essay while still getting assistance with it in some way.
Okay. Yeah, it's funny. You just reminded me that last week, one of your colleagues from another school mentioned that they love reading the essays. It's kind of similarly, it's like this sort of selfish reason of like getting all these interesting stories and learning about new fields and careers and people's experiences, and that it kind of is part of what makes the job enriching and interesting. And I definitely felt that way when I was reading way back when for a school. So let's talk to Alexis over at Washington Foster. What is your take on these two questions?
Yeah, sure. Excuse me. So definitely want to echo what my fellow panelists said for sure. The one other piece I'd probably add for essays is that it's an ability for us to assess cultural fit for the school. So when you're thinking about the schools you want to apply to, ideally you have a really strong sense of the culture of that school. And so when you're writing your essay, if you feel like you could use the exact same essay for each school, that might mean that you need to assess the culture a little more and maybe tweak your essay for each school. So that's the one piece I would add that we're also looking for from essays, is having an understanding of why our school specifically. And that can come out just naturally throughout some of your goals and who you are as a candidate and why you're choosing us to apply to. And as for the chat policy, same as my peers here, prefer your authentic voice. We don't have an official policy, but we do actually plan to add one over the coming year. So you will likely see one on our website soon, encouraging you to use your authentic voice so we can get to know you as a candidate.
Yeah, and we've been asking this question of a lot of schools, both on our podcast and for these sessions that we've been doing, and the answers have been very consistent from all of you, which is sort of like, okay, it's a tool. You might be able to use it to help brainstorm or think about ideas, but be careful when it comes to using it to write, because yeah, your voice will be kind of lost if that's the case, and it's not really your work. And so, and there is one school, I can't remember which one it was, that is requiring people to actually indicate if they used it to help with their essays, so that it's there and they know that the candidate had that kind of assistance. So I thought that was kind of interesting too. Let's move into the next segment here for our session. Oh, someone's reminding, it was London Business School that said that last week. Thank you, Priyanka, for pointing that out. So let's move into our next segment, which is going to be a chance for each of our panelists to talk in depth about their essay questions. And the idea here is that we have some slides with your essay topics on screen. Sometimes it's more than one slide, depending on how many essay questions your program has. And so what I want you to do is guide us to the one that you want to talk about. In this case, with Haas, they're both on the same slide, but just let us know, speak to one of your questions, why your team asks it, what you're looking for when you're reading an answer to this question, and then any advice that you might have for a candidate that's trying to write the essay. And then I'll have some follow-up so that we can talk maybe about the other question in this case. But let's hear where you want to go with this, Nicole.
So I'm going to choose number one to talk about. It is a question that I feel like we're getting known for because we've had it for a few years. But so the question is, what makes you feel alive when you're doing it, and why? And the reason our team decided to ask this question is we really wanted to ask a question that required a lot of self-reflection and to give us as the admissions committee an opportunity to really get to know our applicants on a deeper level. And that self-reflection is typically reflected in this essay prompt. So, and if anyone has been keeping track, we have kept the same, this particular essay question over the last 4 or 5 years now. We do review our essay questions each year and debate other questions to use, but we keep coming back to this one, the alive question, as we call it, because we all still love reading the responses. It is, the great part about this essay prompt is that we really never see 2 essays that are the same. The activity that people talk about might be similar or might be the same, but the reason, the why part of the question will be different. So you just see that reflected in our MBA program at Haas as well. There's this diversity of thought and experiences in our class that really add to our community and culture. And it is definitely part of the reason why we asked this question. As far as what we're looking for, there really is no right answer to this question. The word alive can be interpreted in many different ways. So some look at the word alive as like thrill-seeking adventure, jumping out of an airplane, or, just a hobby that brings joy, or even just like spending time with certain people or in certain places. They can be very literal about it. Breathing makes them feel alive, or, meditating. They could be, very in a more calming setting that way. But this, while this prompt really does give you the opportunity to be creative, the main thing is we really want to learn more about who our applicants are as people. And something that we're not going to learn, like I talked about, we're not going to learn about in the other parts of the application. So this is your chance to really show us who you are, what you're passionate about, what drives you, just the things that, make you happy or fulfilled. it can be just, interpreted in many different ways. And that's what we love about this essay prompt so much. So it is, really the main thing is to find something that's important to you to write about.
Okay. Yeah.
And as far as, okay, go
No,
ahead.
no, go ahead. Go ahead.
I was just going to say the last bit of advice, just to take time to reflect. That's the main reason that we chose this question. Make a list of things that make you feel alive, and then focus on the why piece, because that's the most important part of this question. We see many different activities that people talk about, but the why is the important piece of the response. So sometimes it really just takes some deep thought to understand that why, and that reflection is really what we're looking for.
Yeah, I love this question. I think it's such an interesting question that gives candidates a lot of leeway, and it, obviously requires some reflection. And we've had discussions in the past, you and I, about, oh, does it need to be something professional because this is business school? And the clear answer to that is no, it does not, because you could talk about some of the things you just gave examples of, which are not necessarily professional. So I love it. I know we have another slide here actually with your other two questions, I believe.
Mhm.
And here they are. And I wanted to, so obviously your second essay was a career goals essay. And the
Mhm.
third one is this question about sort of lived experience and kind of diversity. But I wanted to ask a question about this what used to be an essay, and for the last year
Mhm.
now has been switched into a video. So that's right. Like, so 2 admission seasons ago, this video was a written essay. And last year, for the first time, you guys decided to make it a video. I'm kind of curious, like, what was the impetus for that and how did it go? And now that you've probably watched hundreds of these videos, what advice
Mhm.
do you have to someone who's sitting down to do the video for this?
Yeah, it's a great question. Thank you for asking it. So our video essay, one of the main reasons we moved to a video was just to give our applicants and ourselves really an opportunity to assess communication skills from another perspective. Communication skills, obviously not just written, it's spoken. So it just gives us an opportunity to learn more about our applicants from a different side of it. And this prompt, it gives our applicants a chance to kind of showcase their leadership skills and, how they align with our Haas defining leadership principles, or DLPs as we call them. So we're really looking to see that our applicant understands the leadership principles, which is, they're the foundation of our culture at Haas. So it's important that we see our applicants understanding those principles. The question is, it asks them to give an example of their of how they exemplified these principles in their personal and professional life. We are looking to we're looking at the delivery of this content as well as not just understanding what the principles are. The applicants should speak clearly, be engaging, be enthusiastic about Haas. And while we recommend practicing this sort of video essay, if you will, I wouldn't recommend memorizing it, or for sure not reading it, but because it can come off as very inauthentic or robotic. I would say just try to be natural, be yourself. It doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to fit exactly into the 2 minutes, the 2-minute limit that we give you. Just be as authentic and natural as possible.
Excellent. Yeah, I appreciate you shedding light on that. And it must have been fun for you all as an admissions committee to get this sort of glimpse at each of your candidates as you go through, rather than, a subset who get an interview or something, so this is kind of a nice way
Right.
to get a first exposure like that. All right, well, let's move on. Appreciate you, Nicole, shedding so much light on the essay questions. Let's move on and talk with Pat at Dartmouth Tuck. Pat, we've got your essay questions up on screen. Same idea. Take us through one of them in depth here, and then we can do some follow-up.
Sure, happy to. So I'm going to choose essay number 2. Tell us who you are. And to get into how did we choose this question, I want to take a step back to our 4 admissions criteria. So Tuck, we are looking for applicants who are smart, accomplished, aware, and encouraging. And everything in our evaluation process is anchored to those 4 criteria. And every part of the application matches to at least one or more of those criteria. So things like, and I would encourage everybody to go to our blog, to go to our website and read in depth what we mean by each of those four. I'm not going to go into them here. But you know, to get evidence of smart and accomplished, those are pretty straightforward. Smart's going to be your test scores and your transcript. Accomplished is going to be your resume and your extracurriculars and your work experience. But aware and encouraging are the ones that are harder to quantify. And so for that reason, we dedicate our essays to those two criteria. The first two, essay 1 and 2, are getting at the aware criterion, and essay 3 is getting at our encouraging criterion. For awareness, we're looking at it from two directions. With that first essay, we're looking at awareness from the forward looking, where are you going? What do you want to do with your career? And essay 2, which is what I want to talk about, is more of the self-reflection. Where have you come from? What has shaped you? What has built your character as a result of your experiences? So that's what we're getting at with this essay. We want to learn who you are on a deeper level. And that really ties in to Tuck's core values of being an experience that is personal, connected, and therefore transformative. Often I get candidates who will ask me through the application process, you know, I come from an industry that has a lot of people applying to business school, or I come from a region in the world where lots of people are applying. How do I differentiate myself? This is really that place for you to do that. This essay lets us, you know, you are not just your job description, you're not just your citizenship. And so this essay really allows you to tell us who you are. You might define yourself, you know, there's, you know, as Nicole mentioned, there's no right or wrong answer to any of these questions, and the answers are as diverse as our applicant pool. There's no right or wrong. There's no one particular thing that we're looking for, but we really want to understand you. So you might describe yourself and define yourself through, you know, life story, or a community of importance, or a challenge or adversity that you've overcome, relationships that you've had that have been meaningful to you, or experiences that have been impactful. What we want to see are honest, revealing, personal, deeply personal essays, ones that only you could have written, which is why AI does not work for this essay, because we really want to know about the real you. It shouldn't sound like every single other person. And I think sometimes people fall into the trap of telling us what they think we want to hear rather than what they really believe, rather than what really gets them excited. And it's important to tell us, be that authentic you in this essay. It doesn't have to be a single anecdote. It could be multiple threads that tie together to become you. So whatever, you know, there's no particular way you have to organize your thoughts, but just kind of tell us who you are. Two things that I would encourage you to avoid as you're going through this essay. Your story certainly could be around your professional development and kind of how that's shaped you, but I caution you against just doing a resume review in prose. That's not what I want to see. I really want to hear kind of who you are. And I see your resume. I hear from your recommenders. So I'm going to know about your work experience. So this really should go much deeper than that. And then the second part I often see is candidates will use this as a place to tell us all the clubs and activities that they're going to be involved in when they're at Tuck, which is great. We want to see people who are involved. But this essay is really more getting at who you are, who will show up at Tuck when you start the program, not the things that you're going to do and participate in. So we're really looking to get to know the real you. So I think that's all I'll share on that essay right now.
Okay. Yeah. And I guess with 300 words, that's great advice in the sense that they probably don't want to spend words talking about different clubs they're going to join at Tuck when they need to be just, you know, using that space to talk about their background and who they are. I'm picking up on a thread here between Nicole, Pat, and something Alexis said actually too earlier about, you know, each of your programs has a set of values. You know, I think they were the DLPs at Haas, defining leadership principles. Is that what I know? And obviously with Tuck, Pat, you just alluded to these different criteria, and Alexis, you were talking about how, you know, with respect to writing an essay, it's gotta, you know, so you should do that research to get to know the program, and that will show in your materials. So I just want to call attention to that because I think it's an important theme. But Pat, while you're here and we're talking about your essays, I did want to ask you a question that I've asked before, but I think, you know, this is a new year here, new candidates. And so I thought it'd be interesting for you to just shed light on this third essay question, which, you know, obviously could be about a time that someone helped to create an inclusive environment for a peer or whatever the situation might be. But I also wondered, and I've asked you this before, what about changing the viewpoint of someone who wasn't being inclusive to get them to think more inclusively? Like maybe you have a boss who's said something that's not exactly sensitive or that's not inclusive, and you maybe in a side conversation mention that, and that changes the pattern of behavior, and so you change the work environment but sort of more indirectly. Is that fair game for this kind of essay, or is it more the first instance that you're looking for?
Yeah, so when you asked me that before, it's such a creative take on the question and not how we envisioned it when we were writing the question. I think when we were writing it, we were thinking more along the lines of a time that you helped somebody be included.
Hmm.
But I think that the second scenario that you've proposed could be a really interesting way to approach that question. What we're really looking at in this question is your demonstration of that fourth criterion of being encouraging, collaborative, empathetic. And so if you had a situation where, what we want to get at is those interpersonal interactions and how you engage with people. So part of that engagement and encouraging quality at Tuck is also like having difficult conversations and being able to push back in a constructive way, in a way that is, not argumentative, but helps somebody else grow. And so if you had that situation where you were helping someone else grow and you could demonstrate empathy and collaboration and engagement with them and the deep interpersonal skills that are required for that situation, I think that could be a really interesting essay. Most of
Okay.
what we've seen has been your initial, the
Mhm.
primary version, but I think that could
Yeah.
be cool. That's why we want you to apply.
Okay. Okay. Excellent. Appreciate you shedding light on that too. Now we're going to move, and I think I got the alphabet wrong the first time when I did intros and everything, because I think UNC comes before UT. So sorry, Stacy, but we're going to go to Lika first here. But in any event, so Lika, let's do the same thing. Take us through one of your essay questions. Let us know how someone might approach it, et cetera.
Great, sure. So today I'll focus on Essay 2, which is reflect on a project or initiative you were involved in that had a significant positive impact on a community, organization, or individual. How did this experience shape your sense of responsibility as a future leader dedicated to making a difference in the world? And so I shared, funnily enough, I shared in my intro about how I like to read new prompts. Ironically, this is actually the prompt we had last year, and 99% sure this will be our prompt this year because we really enjoyed the responses that we got. But generally, we do change the second essay question every year or every other year, as we're considering staying relevant based on what we're looking for in candidates. But the reason that we decided to ask this particular question is that we want to get to know more about you as a person. As you can see, our first essay is very goals focused. It's very much about your professional experience and where you see yourself going professionally, within Kenan-Flagler and beyond. And so it's a good reminder in essay 2 that you are a full person with thoughts and dreams and opinions, and that you're going to business school as this full person. And so we wanted to ask a question that hopefully could highlight a little bit more about your personal life. And so I think that generally, I encourage people or give advice when people ask about how to frame this question is to, maybe think about your general day-to-day work life and consider something that's a little bit more personal. The best responses that I've read are very introspective and very genuine. And so also going back to talking about AI, this is an essay question that is difficult to be assisted by artificial intelligence because it is so personal and requires a little bit of thoughtfulness. Like Pat was discussing with the approach that Tuck has to their essays, we also are considering our core values throughout the review for a candidate, but we really think about that here because we are, asking about impact, which is one of our core values and has to do with outcomes. But our core values are integrity, innovation, impact, and inclusion. And so I would encourage candidates to consider those and think about that when they're writing this essay. I also like this essay because it considers the future, and presumably you are all pursuing business school to grow in some way professionally and hopefully also personally. And so this is a future casting question. You know, it's reflecting on something that you've been involved in that's had a positive impact. And it could be on the community, it could be within, you know, work, of course, or it could be just a specific person that you've made a positive impact on. And so reflecting on how that has shaped who you are as a person, but also how that's going to impact your ability to be a leader in the world. And so I think that it's a great time of reflection as you consider your why for business school. You know, why are you pursuing an MBA? And for me, this question really takes a deeper dive into that.
Okay, excellent. And I'm so happy that you talked about your 4 I's, because once again, you're bringing up these themes and principles that are important to the school. So I think it's really key for everyone joining today. You got to make note of these things. They're all on the school's websites. They're there for a reason. I did want to ask you a quick question about essay 1. Which, you know, on the surface is, you know, sort of a career goals type essay. A lot of programs ask these types of questions. But what's interesting here is that you also have this kind of part 2 to the question, which is sort of like, okay, well, what if that plan that you just described doesn't come to fruition? What are you
Yeah.
doing then? It's almost like a backup plan or something. And I wondered, where does that come from? What prompted the committee to ask this question? And yeah, just what are you looking for there? How different could the plan B be from plan A? Like, what if someone, you know, like, is there any like issue with that?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. And I think that we are really looking to understand like your flexibility. So when we are assessing a candidate, we're reviewing them to ensure that we have the resources for them to be successful here based on academic preparedness, based on professional background, what their goals are, personal and cultural fit within the class. And so I think that we're looking, you know, things change. The world has changed in so many different ways, many of which are unexpected. What is your approach to change? What is your approach to disappointment potentially? You know, what happens if you work really hard for an internship and you don't get it? How are you adaptable when it matters? So we are, I think, looking at that piece. How have you thought about risk management? Do you have realistic planning and goals? And so I think that it does speak to emotional intelligence, that you don't have a myopic view of like, this is exactly what I'm going to do. And nothing's going to change my mind. Nothing could get in the way of me meeting my goals. Because so many things could happen. It's so funny. Like we always joke that, you know, when we ask about your goals, you come in, you do a 2-year MBA program. We're not holding your essay at graduation being like, you said that you were going to go into sustainability consulting, and then somehow now you're in brand management. You know, like we're not going to hold you to that, but it is always really interesting to see how much people have thought about what their pathway looks like. So that's why I think that we asked that question.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, one of the beauties of the MBA degree is how flexible it is in terms of the opportunities that it opens up for candidates. But I think it's great. It's a good exercise for candidates to do this and think about, well, what would I do if I can't get that first plan? It's just very useful, because the more of a path that you have in mind, and or paths, the more effective you'll be at taking the right sort of classes and making the right choices in school, hit the ground running kind of thing. So,
Yeah,
um,
keep planning.
yeah, exactly. All right, Stacy, you're up. So we're going to hear a little bit more about McCombs' process. So again, we have slides here with essay questions. And yeah, this is interesting. I know you're probably going to speak to this, but last year you had a really different process. So things have changed. So anyway, yeah, take us through one of them and then we'll talk more about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So we did change up our essays this year. So you'll see here on the screen, the first 2, the biggest change was splitting it into 3 separate short essays. So I do think probably the biggest challenge for our applicants is going to keeping those essay responses to 250 words. It's a practice in being concise, I guess.
Yeah.
But we really broke it up into kind of 3 different categories. And we really thought about what are we actually looking for in terms of the content of these essays. So very cut and dry. The first one is why MBA, and why specifically do you want your MBA from McCombs? The second essay is more professional in nature. So looking at your leadership potential, your capacity for innovation, which is really important for our students and alums. And then Graham, maybe go to the next slide, might have the third, which I'm going to talk about a little bit more in depth, which is the more personal essay, which I know we've This is usually the one that we get the most questions about. So I'm glad to hear a lot of the panelists today kind of pinpointing the personal essay, because it can be, it causes a little bit of anxiety sometimes with applicants. So I'll start by saying, you know, we're not looking for, I think there's a misnomer with applicants that you need some sort of trauma or crazy story to talk about when you're really talking about your personal life. And that is not the case. What we're really trying to ascertain with this essay is, who are you outside of work? What makes you who you are? Is it family? What experiences have you had in your life that have really motivated you? And the impetus behind that is because, as you can see here, the UT Austin motto is very important to us. What starts here changes the world. And particularly in the MBA program, we're looking for individuals who want to contribute to the program, to the university and to the larger world. And so we really want to know more about what drives you. So you can take this essay a number of ways. There's really no wrong answer. Some students will choose to talk about their identity or upbringing, maybe formative experiences they've had, obstacles they've overcome, if you have any special interests. So feel free to be creative. Like I said, there's no real wrong answer. It's just really a way for us to get to know you on a more personal level than just hashing out your work experience and kind of talking about your career goals. So yeah, that was a pretty high level overview, Graham, but feel free to ask
No,
me
no,
any
that's
additional
great.
questions.
And
Yeah.
and I mean, I think, you know, some of our attendees don't know, but last year you had a very different approach. Was there was like a cover
Yeah.
letter and no
Yeah.
essays, and the cover
Yeah.
letter covered some of these topics to an extent. But I did wonder though, like I was looking at these essays and I was reading the kind of the questions, and I was like, wow, there seems to be this theme of like impact, ambition, and sort of
Yeah.
shaking
Yeah.
up the status quo. And
That's
so I
right.
wondered, like, does that mean that like people need to have done big things or have ideas around, like you sort of spoke to this a second ago, but I just want to make sure that we understand that, like, do you have to be this like bold pioneer to be compelling to the committee? So what would you
Yeah.
say to that?
It's a great point of clarification, because again, I think there is that myth that you have to have this insane story to share. And, what if you're just like me and grew up in Pennsylvania and, have had a solid career? So my advice is look at more of your potential and your goals. You don't necessarily have to come from this angle of like, I started a company or I did all these crazy big things. We're just looking for individuals that do plan to contribute and that want to be a part of a larger community and make a difference. And so really think about crafting your responses with that in mind and be authentic. I know we've said that word 8 million times already, but it is really the number one thing that you can do in your application. If it seems like you're kind of trying to be this person that you're really not, it does come through. And so we just really want you to be yourself and show your authentic self through this process.
Okay, excellent. Yeah, appreciate you humoring me on these questions. I know they're new, and so we'll see. It should be really fun for you and the team to read these.
Yeah,
So
we're excited.
All right. So Alexis, you've been super patient because we did this alphabetically. The surprise is that when we do the next round of questions, we'll start with you and go backwards through the alphabet. So you'll get a little, not have to wait as long. But yeah, take us through, take us through one of the essay questions, and yeah, just let us know what you're thinking in terms of why you ask it and how people should respond.
Sure. Yeah. So I'll address the personal resilience essay number 2. So we did just add this one last year. We changed it. Particularly, the impetus was based on the changing career landscape as of late. It's a little harder to find a job in some ways. And so we needed to see, we were finding that we needed more and more resilience from our students in the program, in terms of, one, it's just an MBA program is hard, right? It's not an easy program to get through. So showing general resilience in that regard of the academics, balancing so many other aspects of your program, but then also the career search, which just takes a lot of resilience. You're probably not going to apply to one job and get that job and be done, right? So we wanted to see how are students able to be prepared and know that when they're entering the program, they're going to need to have that resilience to succeed. One example is when we had some, our orientation, our lunch program, we had students on panels talking about that search, and one student raised their hand and said, yeah, for me, I applied to 3 or 4 and I got my job. Another student raised their hand and said, I applied to 45 jobs, and I got my job. So there you see a lot of variance in terms of what you need to do to get that ultimate goal that might be why you applied to the program. So when you're thinking about resilience and what that means to you, whether it is personal or professional, either one of those can apply to the program. You don't need to, just as other colleagues have mentioned, you don't need to disclose anything that might be traumatic or upsetting to you, whatever you feel comfortable sharing. But we have seen a huge range in terms of resilience that students have shared. It could be anything from a really challenging product launch that you've gone through in a tight deadline, to marathons you've been running, to challenges with alcoholism, right? So there's a lot of ways that you can be yourself, again, authentic to the committee about what you feel like resilience is and what that means to you. So that's in general, what we feel like will set up student up for success in the program, just having a sense of also what you're getting into. And again, even just the application process, as you've likely found, is not easy for an MBA program. You have to really do a lot of research, put a lot of effort into it. And then once you get into the program, it's really exciting, but it's also takes a lot of effort, and knowing that you'll have some setbacks and you'll just keep on going. So so that's what we're looking for the resilience essay, is
Okay.
understanding candidates better that way.
Excellent. Yeah, that's a great idea, to kind of get students to reflect on that. I think we have another slide. I'm hoping we do. We may or may not, but I think we have another slide. Maybe we don't. Uh, well, let's talk. So we don't have it on a slide, but I know that you guys have 2 optional essays, or at least you used to. I don't know if that's still the case with this cycle. Are you still doing that?
Yes, we have an optional
Yeah.
essay, and then we also have a DEI focused optional essay if you would
Yeah.
like
So
to
there are these
continue.
2. Yeah. So one is about diversity, equity, and inclusion, and the other is just sort of a traditional optional essay where someone could, just offer an explanation about something in their file, et cetera. But I kind of wondered, do you have a sense as to like what percentage of the pool is writing one or both of those, or any advice there? Because it's common to see an optional essay that's just for like, oh, I need to explain a gap in employment or why I don't have a recommendation for my current employer, but then this other optional essay about diversity, equity, and inclusion, I just wonder, like, do most people write that? Like, is that something that you're seeing a lot of? And yeah, just be helpful to shed light on that.
Yeah, no, we definitely see a lot of students utilize that space. There can sometimes be a bit of an overlap in the personal resilience and then the DEI piece, depending on who you are as a candidate and what those particular categories might mean to you.
Hmm.
But we do see, I think, particularly as of late, there's more and more of a focus in organizations that you're applying for on DEI, and just more of an understanding of being able to answer that question and what that means to you. So we've seen a lot more students using that space, and it's been again another area where we're able to assess cultural fit for our program, because we do, the DEI piece is a mandatory part of our program. It's not a one-time training that you have in the beginning of your orientation and then it's done. It's something that we revisit many times throughout the program in different conversations. So knowing that you're also prepared to have some conversations around that, even if they might be uncomfortable for you, is something that we can glean from that particular essay. So we
Yeah.
have had a fair amount, I'd say most students write something there
Okay.
about what that means to them.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, it seems like a nice opportunity too for someone to be able to kind of, elaborate on their background and such. So feels like a good thing to do. All right, yeah, and I'm sorry we didn't have a slide with that. And the other essay, that essay 3, I guess it is a traditional optional essay that's just kind of tell us something that, if there's something that you need to address, like a low GPA or gap in employment and stuff. So all right, so appreciate. Let's stay with Alexis from Foster as we get into the last phase of our session. And I do want to remind all of our attendees that in a few minutes here, each of our panelists is going to bounce off into a Zoom breakout room. And so we'll give you instructions on how to join them there if you want to ask questions of our panelists. But first, we have this lightning round where we get to ask some fun questions. There are 3 fun questions, and we'll just do all 3 of them with Alexis and then move backwards through the alphabet here to each of our panelists. So, Alexis, what's one thing that you love about working in MBA admissions at Foster?
Sure. Gosh, there's a lot of things I love about admissions. I've been in admissions a long time, and I'd say in general, I think it's Well, our program's small, so we know each individual in our program. That's one thing that's really special, I think, about the admission process is we're looking for who's a cultural fit specifically within a small program. You have a lot of impact when you know your classmates' names, you know who's involved and things and who's not. So I would say, in general, I think about what I love about working in admissions, though, is that each application is like a present. You never know what
Mhm.
you're going to get. So you open up this application and I get excited each time I read one. I've read many, many, many at this point in my life, and I still get excited. So it's really, we care about what you've written. We want to learn about you, and it's exciting for us too. So thank you for
Yeah.
sharing what you share with us on this journey.
Excellent. And Alexis has just underlined one of the things that I think makes MBA admissions so great for the candidate. And that's that I think all of our panelists would agree that they're really they're going to read your file. And actually, in most cases, multiple people on their team will read your file. So this is not a kind of, oh, what was the test score in the GPA? We put that into a computer and we only read the ones that hit some threshold. Nothing like that goes on at any of these programs. And so I think that it's great because it rewards you for all the work that you're putting into, crafting your application. It really will be read multiple times by these individuals. All right, next question for Alexis in our lightning round is just give us one piece of non-essay advice, since that's all we've been talking about today. So one piece of non-essay advice for someone interested in Foster.
Sure. Well, I would definitely say try and connect with students if you can. So most schools will have that avenue. They can give you some of the best advice in terms of not necessarily advice for getting in, right? That's not really their role for you're connecting with them, but to share with you about the culture of the program, what they like, what they've maybe found challenging, so that you can assess the best fit for you. So it
Mhm.
might mean a little more to you coming from a student sometimes than from an admission representative. So again, you can ask more pointed questions to them that are along the student side, and I think that helps you write more effective essays as well. I know it's not essay advice here, but I have to tie that back in to say that
Yeah,
it
no,
certainly will help. So
no, you're totally right. I think, yeah, talking to students will just enrich everything that you're doing in your application, including the essays.
yeah.
All right, last lightning round question for you. And this is just kind of a fun one. In honor of Berkeley's essay question, I thought it'd be fun to ask you, what do you do that makes you feel alive?
Yeah, so I love this Berkeley's essay question. That's so much fun. I can't imagine how much fun it must be to read all those. So I would say a great bike ride. Seattle has some really lovely summer months and some big hills and it's kind of bombing down those hills on a summer day is pretty fun for a
All
great bike
right.
ride. So that'd be what makes me feel alive.
Oh, excellent. All right. Let's turn to Stacy at UT Austin McCombs. All right, Stacy, one thing that you love about working in MBA admissions at your program.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure we're all going to say somewhat similar things, so I'll try and mix it up. But I think our team, I mean, I've been at UT going on 10 years, and everyone on my team, I love, love, love working with them and them as human beings. And that goes to our leadership too. So it's kind of cool. We have, some great deans at McCombs and some great leaders that are our partners. I think that's not always the case in admissions, but we all feel like we're working toward the same goal and want the same things when we're admitting classes. So yeah, my team, I love them.
I've met some of them. They're pretty cool. I agree.
They're
Yeah, you
pretty
have a nice
great.
team. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Next question is one piece of non-essay advice.
Yeah, definitely talking to students, as Alexis said, I think that's a big piece of it. The area I see applicants kind of trip over when they're applying to McCombs is not doing enough research or spending enough time on our application. And since this is an essay presentation, I should also mention, like, we can tell when you just recycle essays from other schools and send it to us, right? So really taking the time to get to know the school you're applying to. I know it is a lot of work, and we acknowledge that, attending events, even it's time, it's a time investment, but it's really going to help strengthen your application at the end of the day, because you're going to be able to really tie everything to why you want to go to that particular school. So attend events, talk to students, get to know us.
Yeah, great advice. And I think, rather than applying to like 12 schools, which some people at this stage at early in the application process think they're going to apply to 12 schools,
Oof.
you're probably better off applying to like 5 that you do a
Yep,
ton of research on than you are applying to 12 where you won't get into any because they'll all know that you didn't bother
that's
to learn
exactly right.
enough. So,
Yep.
and then the last question for you in the lightning round here is just this, what makes you feel alive?
Yeah, I'll use this as an example because my scooter is actually broken right now, so I'm very sad about it. But I drive a Vespa to work to get to UT, and every morning the wind hitting my face. Very few people can say they really love going to work, and I'm like, when I get there, I'm feeling good. So I have that little energy in my scooter ride to work, so that definitely makes me feel alive.
Awesome. All right. As we continue backwards through the alphabet, we turn to Lika. What's one thing you love about working at Kenan-Flagler in admissions, Lika?
I love the opportunity to travel to as many places as possible and meet with people on their home turf. It's a great opportunity to have informal conversations, and even sometimes opportunities for candidates to get to know each other and their future, potential classmates. So I really enjoy watching people make connections with each other. So I would say that's my
Excellent.
favorite part.
All right. What about a piece of non-essay advice?
Um, a piece of practical advice, I think, is to prepare your timelines. All of us have different deadlines, different requirements to complete the application, different timelines of when you would have to let a school know. And it can be really overwhelming if you're applying to multiple institutions. And so in some ways, I think it's helpful to calendar it all out, and identify like when deadlines are and when you need to, it's a time to get organized, especially because I would imagine that the majority of you are balancing applying for MBA programs on top of potentially full-time jobs that also are very busy for you. So just starting early and preparing those timelines.
Yeah, that's a great piece of advice because you don't want to be submitting these things on the deadline day, filling out the data forms, et cetera. I mean, yeah, figure out when the deadlines are and then work accordingly because I've seen people do very odd things in terms of not doing the applications in the order that they should be because they haven't figured out exactly when everything's due. So great advice. Last thing, what makes you feel alive?
I'll go back to the fact that I love to travel. I will say that taking off in an airplane makes me feel alive.
All right. Excellent. Okay, Pat, let's turn to you. What do you love about working at Tuck?
Yeah, so I love, like all of us do, love working with the students, and you all have done amazing things in your lives so far. And when you combine that with what you get from an MBA, it's like rocket fuel, and you take off and do such amazing things after you graduate. And so our mission is we're developing wise, decisive leaders who better the world through business. And while I may not change the world, my small part of bringing you to Tuck and getting you those skills and you go out and change the world is really satisfying to be a small part of that world changing experience.
Yeah, that's a really lovely point. Could not agree more. That's kind of why we do what we do at ClearedMet too. I mean, just love helping people discover graduate management education. So, all right, next question, piece of non-essay advice.
Yeah, so this one probably sounds easier said than done, but I'm going to say it. Try not to stress out about all of this. I know it's a lot going on, but I think as you've seen from all of us on the panel, we're nice people. Schools are out there looking for reasons to admit you, not for reasons to reject you. Remember, it is a holistic evaluation. So there's no one piece that's more important than another. And you're going to have strengths and you're going to have weaknesses. And remember to, highlight those strengths and try not to worry about the weaknesses. And I genuinely think everybody ends where they're meant to be. And so try, if that can take just a little bit of the pressure off of you, try to do that.
All right, getting lots of love from the audience for that comment. All right, last point. What makes you feel alive?
Being outdoors. I live in a beautiful part of the world. I can get on trails by walking out my back door. And so being in the woods, hiking, and being outside.
Excellent. All right, Nicole, now you've been patient, but you did get to hear everyone answer what they would say for Haas's essay. So maybe that's some reward there. But what's one thing that you love about working at Haas?
Yeah, so going last, I'm going to try to, although I echo everything my colleagues have said, I'm going to try to come up with something a little bit different. Well, so what I love most, so I love working with the people at Haas. Our admissions team is very diverse, and I love that we bring so many different perspectives to our work, and it just gives us the opportunity to learn from each other. And our team is super supportive, and I just love all of them, and I love working with them. So that's
Excellent.
Yeah.
All right. What's one piece of non-essay advice you would give?
I don't know if this is non-essay, but I would just say to be as consistent as possible with your application components and your story. But if there is something that you feel is very important to you that you would like to share, but it feels kind of a bit random or, maybe an outlier from the rest of your application, um, still share it, don't leave it out if it's important to you, if it is meaningful to you. That is what, well, at least for Haas, that is what our optional essay is for. It gives you the opportunity to share more about who you are, or about something that you really care about or is meaningful to you, even
Okay.
if it doesn't really fit with the rest of your application.
Okay. Yeah, great advice. And then this is unfair, but I don't know if you guys have had to answer this since it's your essay question. Maybe that's like one of the exercises you do for team building. But what would
Yeah,
you say
we
to
we
this
do it a
essay?
lot. We do it a lot and it changes a lot. So that is my advice to people is, this it's one moment in time that is what you feel like is most important to you or it makes you feel alive. It can change. It can change tomorrow, it can change next year.
Mhm.
And for me it changes all the time depending on when you ask me. Um, I was thinking about this morning and for me it's a very simple activity of walking. And walking can mean very many things. It could be walking the dog in our neighborhood and, chatting with neighbors. It could be walking around a new city and exploring. It could be hiking up a mountain and feeling that sense of accomplishment when you get to the top. Yeah, it could be, if I'm by myself, it's like a moment of self-reflection and just having some quiet and alone time. So,
Mm.
I know that I have, I also have, not everyone has the privilege of being able to walk, and I am grateful for that. So I take that into consideration as well.
Excellent. Yeah, now that you've said all these nice things about your teammates and this great reflective kind of what makes you feel alive, I think they would admit you to Haas. I'm pretty sure.
I hope so.
All right. So what we're going to do now is we're going to let our panelists jump into their breakouts, but I do want our audience to stay with me because we want to give our panelists just a minute or two to take a drink of water and to get themselves settled. So please don't bum rush their little Zoom breakouts just yet. Just hang with me. I'll let you know when you can go and bother them. But in the meantime, I did want to sincerely thank Nicole, Pat, Lika, Stacy, and Alexis for your time. And I'm so grateful that you'll stick around and answer questions in the breakouts. But it's always lovely to see all of you and just really appreciate you guys doing this. So thanks so much. And Mike will help you move into the different breakouts. But yeah, thanks so much. So in the meantime, while we let our panelists get settled into their breakouts, I just wanted to give you guys a couple of tidbits about things you should be doing at this time of year. And I mentioned this last week, but it still stands. If you have not gone onto our website and filled out an ApplyWire entry, which is free and you don't have to give your name, it's totally anonymous. It's a great way to get free advice on your candidacy. So you put in the schools you're thinking of applying, some facts and figures about your background, a note if you want to shed more light. And then you will see that members of our team will just come on and give you some feedback about where you are. There's a comment from me there and one of my colleagues, Alex, on the team. So definitely use ApplyWire. It's a great way to just get some early kind of feedback on your candidacy. And then the last thing I wanted to mention is, and I think I said this last week as well, we have a podcast that airs at least once a week. Every Monday, we have an episode where we break down real candidate profiles. It's called Wiretaps, and we kind of basically take folks from our website who've shared their profile and talk about their candidacy. Again, it's all anonymous, but you get to be sort of a fly on the wall for an admissions committee style meeting where we're breaking down someone's candidacy. Very useful way to learn about MBA admissions. The show gets great reviews on Apple and Spotify. You can find it on any platform that you would listen to a podcast on, as well as on our website. So please tune in every Monday. We run a new episode. We also have been running extra bonus episodes where I sit down with admissions directors from leading schools and ask them questions. So yeah, stay tuned. There's lots of great content there. I think our panelists are now safely ensconced in their breakouts. So I'm going to set you all free. I did want to remind you that we're doing this next week and the week after with a whole bunch of wonderful programs, including University of Chicago, Columbia, Yale. I mean, there are a number of schools that are going to be joining us over the next 2 weeks. And I do want to express my gratitude to all of you for taking time to join us. You can hit the breakout rooms. You can actually bounce between them. So if you have a question for Berkeley and then you want to go ask Foster a question, you can do that. That's the beauty of them all being within Zoom here. But I did want to, again, thank all of you for making time to join us this week. And I hope to see you all next week. So thanks again for all your time.